In this video, we're going to be discussing web scraping. So what is web scraping and how is it being used online? So if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss a future episode. So with that out of the way, let's get into this video. Today we're talking about web scraping. What is web scraping? You may have heard this term thrown around by programmers. So web scraping is the ability to crawl a website or use a bot to gather data from a website and use that data to do something on a different server or on your own website. So you're going to take that data from a third-party website, use it for your own means. So when it comes to why people would use a web scraper, there are literally dozens, if not hundreds of different reasons why people use web scrapers. Now, some of the common reasons are people will build things like a comparison website, for example. So that will pull data from multiple different sources and allows the users of that website to compare something like prices or details about different products, for example. So that's one use case where you want to pull the data off multiple sources. But there are other reasons why people use web scraping. Some of them are very harmless reasons, and there are also reasons why people do it that are a little bit more concerning. So people also use it for web scraping people's private data, for example, or email addresses or phone numbers, things like that. So there are bad reasons why people do it, but there are also good reasons or harmless reasons why people do web scraping. Another example of a case where you may want to do web scraping is something like a search engine. So for example, Google has its own crawlers, web crawlers. So in that case, they are literally just going to your website, downloading the data, caching it, and indexing information on that page. So maybe they're counting the keywords and what those keywords are on that page and indexing it in their search results. So literally these big search engines are doing that at mass scale. So we're doing that across millions of websites, crawling them, downloading data, and processing that data. So that's one real world use case where web scraping is basically happening all the time, every day. And there are other use cases where there are business needs for doing web scraping. Another example is if you wanted to gather information from a social media platform. So maybe you're doing something like brand awareness. So you have a big brand and you want to know what people are saying about their products or their services. So you can do something like sentiment analysis on that data. So whether people are happy with your products or dislike them. So you could do something like that where you're scraping data off social networks. So in that case, you would be processing the data and you would be doing some kind of sentiment analysis on that data to understand what the meaning behind that data is. So that's a different example of how you might do web scraping. Quite often the use for web scraping is also to analyze your competitors. So many businesses do this. So they want to understand when their competitors are changing prices or when they're offering new services, for example. So they use web scraping as a means of monitoring their competitors and seeing what they're doing differently, what they're changing. So that is kind of a different use case again. So in general, I would say that web scraping is not that difficult. It does vary in terms of difficulty depending on which website you're trying to scrape. For example, if you are trying to get data that is behind a login screen, so maybe you're trying to scrape a big website and they require you to sign in to that account, well then you wouldn't be able to scrape the data that is behind that login. So in that case, you would need to do some kind of authentication before scraping. So that gets a little bit more complicated, but for public pages, web scraping is not that difficult generally. And it really just comes down to putting the right practices in place so that you are not causing problems on their website. When you are scraping web pages that are public, then it's much easier because there are no complications like sign-ins or logins to access that data. So it's public information, you can scrape it, but you should bear in mind that you are also dealing with someone's live web server. So you don't want to crash their server. You don't want to be sending a lot of traffic at their website at one time. So there are measures you should consider to do or to put in place to prevent causing a problem on their website. So normally I would recommend doing some kind of delay between requests. So putting a 1 second or 2 second delay between requests to prevent you from overloading their website if they have hundreds of pages. So there are things you can do to make the process easier, but this is just a quick summary video to talk about web scraping and the reasons you might want to use it as a developer. That's about it for this video. Hopefully you guys have found this helpful. Make sure to like and subscribe and drop me any questions in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.